One morning I was eating breakfast and I was on YouTube looking for something to watch. I was recommended a video titled, "Is Love Racist? The Dating Game." It was a 48-minute documentary, but I clicked on it anyway, thinking I would maybe watch the first 5 minutes. I ended up watching the entire video as it ended up reminding me of a lesson Kreia teaches the exile. The video was originally shown on Channel 4, a British public service free-to-air television network. Emma Dabiri is a social historian who wanted to explore how significant physical appearances really are in human peer bonding. The results of her experiments reminded me of the lesson Kreia teaches the exile when she first shows her how to read the environment and people through the Force.
There is nothing wrong with my sight, if that is your question. I see all that I need, though the seeing of things flesh and blood has failed me some time ago. They were distractions only. There is nothing wrong with my eyes, they simply have atrophied from use. They are adequate to distinguish shapes, silhouettes. If need be, I could heal them, restore my sight, but sight can prove a distraction. When one relies on sight to perceive the world, it is like trying to stare at the galaxy through a crack in the door. But that is a lesson for another time. You must learn to see crude matter for what it is before the veil is lifted. Close your eyes. Feel this ship around you. The welding of the droid as it goes about its work. Now stretch out. Hear the rumble of hyperspace, the hum of the hyperdrive. The breathing of the blinded one as she meditates in the dark. Now, listen deeper, past her breathing, and listen.
As my feet walk from the ashes of Qatar, I shall not fear, for in fear lies death, and...
You know what you heard. It is what I hear. Constant whispers of wants, desires, lies told to oneself to stave off the darkness around us. You are strong indeed. What you heard were surface thoughts only, but it is something that masters have trained for years and never learned.
After the reading, you can ask Kreia about it, and she says,
That is not the real question you should ask. Is such listening enough to perceive the world around you? It is not. Because to listen to the thoughts of another is much like attempting to see the universe only with your eyes. It is equally limiting.
The experiments they went on to conduct in the Channel 4 piece would go on to produce evidence that supports Kreia's statement. At first, the presenter asked random people to choose a mate only from a list of names. When people see someone's name written down, a person's brain tends to immediately begin to try and fill in the blanks of who this person may be. This exercise showed that going by name alone is a rather large blank to fill, and the assumptions we fill the blanks with can easily be wrong. In short, it isn't optimal for such a decision. But what about physical appearances? They brought in a group of people from various different races, cultures, sexual orientations, and so on. They began by simply asking the participants questions to build a dating profile, while unbeknownst to them, the researchers were only truly interested in what they choose when it came to racial preference. Then they moved on to visual stimuli by showing them pictures of various people, but then they followed this up by using eye tracking technology to see who they looked at the most when their involuntary functions were more at the wheel. This is where some of the previous statements started to crack. Because while most of them focused on Caucasian individuals, no matter the gender, there was this one guy in particular who stated that after being with mixed-race women, he decided that he was not truly attracted to them, but he ended up spending about a fifth of his time looking at them. Him and another white man spent the least amount of time looking at white females.
If her alabaster skin was as white and unblemished as her face.
They continued down the road of physical attraction for a little while longer until they finally switched things up and forced the participants to give up their sight and use other senses. They had some of them smell the clothing of different sweaty men. The results seemed diverse in the sense that one person found the scent revolting while another found it quite pleasing. Meanwhile, they had a different group utilize their sense of hearing. I think you can already tell what happened. The results were very different from when it was only visual. Because while the Caucasian individuals were overwhelmingly chosen then, this time the choices weren't centered on any one group or person. And in the end, the one person who was the most adamant about having a racial preference was one of only 2 people to not exhibit having one at all.
Because to listen to the thoughts of another is much like attempting to see the universe only with your eyes. It is equally limiting.
Obviously, Kreia isn't necessarily talking about relationships, but it is an aspect of life. It's also just one way of examining her words, especially in a society where it seems like the more we elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. There's 2 ways that I look at that quote. The first being the less we physically communicate, face to face, and the second being the less we communicate in ways other than with words. For example, from body language, scent, and touch. If you're someone who is looking for a significant other, physical attraction can of course be important to you. Just understand that employing your sight alone is a limitation. Ask the majority of people and I think they would say that personality is more important at the end of the day. It's the looks that bring people together, but it's the personality that keeps people together. You can't physically see someone's personality. And in real life, we can't use the force to uncover it either. We have to speak to them. We have to examine their actions and their reactions. That's why if you're looking for someone new, people may suggest that instead of going to a bar or a club, you could join a class of some sort. In a nightclub, your senses are either being bombarded with stimuli or they're being impaired by substances. While in a classroom, if the people there wanted to stay, then they have no choice but to at least occasionally listen to you and get to know your personality. This can let them break through the visual barrier if one was present. In fact, I have first-hand experience with this myself. My previous companion was someone I met in a classroom. She came in late without her book, and so we shared mine. After a brief conversation with our teacher about modern-day human interaction, I started speaking to her. As the class was working through some multiple-choice questions in the book, I noticed that the answers were set in a particular pattern. I told her this and proceeded to predict the subsequent answers. She would later tell me that it was this display of perceptiveness and intelligence that initially made her interested in me. After that, we mostly interacted through text messages, and she told me that she didn't think that we'd make a good match. It wasn't until we met up in real life again that she re-expressed interest. I may have never gotten a chance to impress her the way I did if we were in a bar or out in the street. I never would have had the time to really get past anything other than physical appearances. Vice versa, there was this other girl who I found very beautiful, and she was mostly in my physics class back in middle school. The more I got to know her, the less interested I became, until I was placed in a situation where I found myself telling her as much, and I referenced her subpar intelligence as the reason. One thing led to another, we agreed on a little contest. The person who gets the highest grade on the next test wins. I won, of course. She didn't even pass the test, and I laughed in her pretty little face. Human interaction almost always starts with what you can see and progresses to other senses from there. Hearing, smelling, touching, tasting, and ultimately, your sixth sense, if you will. Your ability to read people and get to know who they really are. If you're hoping to find the best match for you, never rely solely on one power. That way the relationship may continue to progress to a point that many desire to reach. A feat that makes it so those involved willingly give each other the means to their own destruction, otherwise known as love.
If he truly loved her, truly.
I'm sure many people struggle to understand Kreia's position on this most fascinating of emotions.
And such passions are not strength but erosion.
But that, ladies and gentlemen,
it is a pure, ideal love he holds.
Is a story for another day.